Hello and welcome to the Film Angle. I'm Alex.
And I'm Kris.
And today is our 61st episode. We didn't really reference the fact that our previous episode was our 60th, but there you go.
Is that a big deal, really? I thought 50 was like a bigger thing.
I think every time we hit a zero, I'm like,
a zero, it feels monumental.
I'm like, oh, wow.
We've
and
made
also,
it.
like, I feel like if we average out an hour, though I think a lot of our episodes probably are just under, so we're probably not at 60 hours worth of content, but I just feel like that's a lot of us talking. That's a lot of
yeah.
What's the 7-hour film we watched again?
Satan Tango. Yes,
that's a lot of Satan Tangos. Jesus, that's terrible, man. That's terrible. I actually liked that film, and we're gonna get a little bit. I'm gonna get a little bit more. We're gonna get a little bit more BFI heavy today. And Kris, we might have to do more BFI heavy stuff going forward because I don't know if you've heard about the Screen Actors Guild potentially going on strike with the writers, which means without writers, without actors, no films are going to be made, meaning no films are going to come out next year.
Well, what's the scope of this thing? How long is this going on for?
All your big movies that have been filming because they've got locked in scripts, lots of photos of like Deadpool 3 coming out and stuff like that. They're all going to have to stop entirely, which is going to shift the kind of landscape of films being released probably over the next few years. So interesting times.
So much more
cleared up.
Potentially a lot more time to catch up of old movies. I hope it's not, like you said, too much of time put on that.
Yes. There's a lot of stuff we're excited for, but I'm just happy that Scorsese's got his picture unlocked for this year.
Yeah, so. Can I? What did you think? I'm sure like a lot of people listening have seen the newest trailer for that movie. I don't know, man. That trailer seemed a bit off to me. Did you catch up with it?
No, but I didn't for the very reasons that you've mentioned, because I heard people saying that
it's very Tarantino-esque, like
it felt very different to the first trailer, and I was like, do you know what? I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm excited from that first trailer. I don't want to see anything else. And not that trailer would dampen my excitement, but I was just like, I guess it just shows you the different ways one can edit a trailer. To make a good movie look bad, to make a bad movie look good.
Yeah. I always think like the famous example of that was in Bruges, whenever that came out, is that if you go back and watch the original trailer on YouTube, it advertises that movie as like a full-blown, like sort of Goodfellas action movie, like sort of just a romp. And it's like, it's a romp, but in a completely different way. And it doesn't not capture like the bleakness that's in that movie too. So like it really does show like, sometimes these directors have no say over what is released about their movies. The marketing department takes it.
I feel like a lot of like arty horror films, like your Ari Aster films, kind of suffer from that same thing of, a marketing department runs with it as a horror film, as a straight up horror film. And then when audiences get to the cinema, they're kind of, I would say, treated to something different. But yes, mainstream audiences aren't always going to connect with those kind of crazy films. But yeah, no, it's interesting time for cinema. Thankfully, Tom Cruise has been out promoting Mission Impossible before all this happened. He is the cinema man at the moment, doing all the heavy lifting. But you've seen Mission Impossible, and we're not going to review it next week. But give us a little taste. Give us a little.
Look, I mean, I caught up with Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 yesterday, and all I will say for now is if you really enjoyed the whole collaboration that's been going on between Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise, as they seem to be this sort of powerhouse duo with obviously being the minds behind Top Gun Maverick and certainly the last two Mission Impossible movies that came out before, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It's that feeling of being in the capable hands of somebody who's going to look after you for nearly 3 hours. So I'll discuss more of that with you next week. And
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I must say though, for audiences that haven't seen it yet as of the release of this, and
Mm-hmm.
myself. Obviously, they bring back a character from the past. We've seen him in the trailers. What do I need to remember from Mission Impossible 1? Because I was like, I remember him talking to that guy. Was that the
I
guy where he's
remember
talking to
too.
him with like the fish, the
Yeah,
well, they got a fish tank kind of blows up behind them. I remember that much. I'm like, who
yeah.
is he? I can't remember.
No, you're right. That character has made a return to this movie, but it's not like there's nothing you need to know. I mean, I think maybe have the last two films, like especially with the new characters that have been introduced. I think that's got to be more at the forefront of your mind. But
Mm,
still, like you could still go into this movie completely like fresh and like not remember anything about the last ones. You could take your relatives that are like sort of like dip into these movies and they'll like
yeah.
get along just fine. The thing, there are nods, like there are little trinkets in there for people who are really big fans of the series, particularly like the first three movies. So for people who are really tuned into like what those movies were about, you'll find little extra things to find here, but they're not major. They're not major. It's just a really good standalone. Well, you know,
Part
I won't
one.
spoil anymore, but it's
It is called
and
part
it's got
one for a
yeah,
reason.
it's just part one. But I will say that it's a full meal. You know, it's not like you're gonna be left there going, oh, for God's sake, you're gonna feel satisfied at the end of this thing.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, no, I am very much looking forward to it. As with all the Mission Impossible films, like it's not really about the plot. Like I watched Fallout the other day. Third time. I love that film, but every
Mhm.
time I put that film on, I'm like, I don't fully remember the plot of this film. I just remember the action, and it is
Yeah.
amazing
Not
action.
not to do the plotting of. So I think McQuarrie is a good writer, and I do think that
Oh yeah,
there's real like intelligence behind their writing. Sometimes I mean, like they do a really good job of making those sometimes on pen and paper like ridiculous scenarios just authentic because you just it's Tom Cruise and you just can't. Nobody else can get away with it. So this is another instance of that, and the bad guy in this one is maybe more than just the one guy wanting to destroy everything. So there's something a bit more interesting going on here that speaks to our times. I don't know if you're aware, but I'll save that for next time too. So yeah, definitely excited to catch up with you on that. And I recommend anybody listening right now who hasn't gone seeing Mission Impossible yet. Yeah, definitely pay your ticket.
excellent. That's good. That's good to hear. Well, let's push that aside. We'll talk
I know it's
Mission
so tempting.
Impossible
Just
in
go
full
across.
spoilers next week when I've seen it because I don't want to know anything.
No,
But yeah, so next week's episode will be Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, part one. Shall we talk BFI? We've caught up with a couple of our blind spots on the Sight and Sound's greatest films of all time list.
sure
They do one
have.
every decade. The first film, I guess, isn't actually a blind spot for me, but I did rewatch it to be able to just chat more in depth with you, Kris, which was Imitation of Life, a 1959 film directed by Douglas Sirk.
Actually haven't caught up with Douglas Sirk as a filmmaker as of yet. I'm a little bit behind on his filmography, so this is a really good like sort of entry point for me. He kind of specialized in the Hollywood melodramas of the 1950s, and he also did like sort of comedies and Western films too. But this is like you think this is going to be like a pretty um, one type of story, and then this turns into like something really like ahead of its time, and packs a real punch. Like I didn't expect going into this movie that I'd be nearly like kind of close to tears by the end of it, and I don't really want to amp it up too high, but there's some amazing performances in here, and just really it feels really raw when you're watching it in a time period where it is rife with the material that it's playing on.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the story.
Mhm.
We follow Lana Turner, who plays Laura Meredith, and her daughter Susie. Later in her, because there's a bit of a time jump in this film. She's later played by Sandra Dee,
Yeah.
so she isn't just a song from Greece. They encounter Sarah Jane, a young child, and her mother. Annie Johnson, played by Juanita Moore, and they are black. But Sarah Jane passes for white,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of take it. Laura takes in Annie and Sarah Jane, and they kind of. Well, I guess she kind of pays her to be her maid. Initially, it's just kind of like, you can just stay
Yeah,
with me.
this is
But
interesting.
as she makes her way into Broadway, I guess she probably starts paying for her to be a maid, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
helps raise the kids together. It's a very kind of friendly relationship that they have. Um, but Sarah Jane never fully comes to terms with the fact, or like she knows that she's black, but she doesn't want to be, and she really, because she passes for white, she sees the privileges, especially from watching Susie grow up as well, of how being white in the 50s was, a way to not experience the kind of racism that was
Yeah,
directed towards black people at that time, and still currently not perfect in society. So yeah, which is a really interesting dynamic for a film in the 50s that deals with the racism and this idea of a child wanting to be white, and basically disowns her mother throughout the film, wants nothing to do with her, which causes her mother quite a lot of stress.
yeah.
And Annie almost succumbs to, is it a heart attack? I think she's got a bad heart, but the idea is,
Yeah,
she.
she's complete. It's Padme.
Yeah, I was about to say they Padme her. She dies of a broken heart.
She dies. Yeah, yeah. I think it's extreme emotional distress over the period of many years. Yeah,
Yes, yeah, and that kind of, but obviously, the final scene of the film, probably the most gut wrenching one, and probably I
yeah,
imagine the one where you were close to tears, Chris, is
yeah.
kind
It's
of.
we'll get into that, but yeah, that I was just like that was catastrophic for me watching that.
Yeah, she this massive funeral through the streets of New York with a
Yeah,
carriage and Annie's coffin in the back, and Sarah Jane, who hasn't seen her mother in a long time after kind of disowning her, kind of realizes at that moment the error of her ways, and cries and
yeah. She
apologizes.
like screams, "I killed my own mother," and she's like
Yeah,
she goes to the she crashes into the coffin and throws herself and try to almost get to the body. She's just completely inconsolable and hysterical, and it's tragic because I think it's a very relatable theme in general for anybody. It's like you know regret and saying goodbye when you feel like you shouldn't have. It's all the things that you should have said in life. Relationships with parents, I think, is that's a really big common thread for a lot of us. We all have to say goodbye to somebody, and there's something we wish we would have done differently or would have let them know. And this is an extreme example of that. And obviously it's complicated with the complete denial of her mother. Really, the fact that she disowned her own mother, that she'd rather be accepted by this society that's wrong and pigeonholed her race of people completely unjustifiably, and she'd rather fit into that mold than to recognize her own mother. Her own mother is absolutely saintly in this and deals with Sarah Jane in probably the best way a mother like that could. So, but it's completely relatable. You don't feel that. I think Susan Connor, who plays Sarah Jane, although I think everybody's amazing in this, I think Sandra Dee, as you joked about as well, I think she's so good. She's such this like little ball of energy in the movie that kind of balances out a little bit. But Susan Connor really, really plays this role so well. I think she is such an unsung hero here, and she manages to play a really, really tricky and quite daring role for the time. I was wowed by her.
yes. Though it is worth saying that Susan Connor is white, in like the actress is white.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
And there was a because this is an adaptation of a book that got made in the 1930s into a film, and the Sarah Jane role is actually played by a black woman in the 1930s film. So as much as this is progressive, it's slightly less progressive than the 1930s version, which is kind of strange. But we mentioned the storyline of Sarah Jane, obviously, and her mother, and that battle against her skin color. But there is another story that kind of runs opposite it, which involves Sandra Dee falling for her mother's boyfriend, sometimes boyfriend, and I must say, like,
it's complicated.
that didn't really work for me. Like, I just did not care about that storyline at all. For me, the main focus was Sarah Jane and Annie and that relationship and their storyline and how that evolves. So if I was to like criticize this film, I'd just be like, just forget the Sandra Dee storyline. I'm not fussed about that.
I could forgive it because of just how great she is in that role, and I think it's relatable to the whole like unrequited youthful love. I think that's some people might get on board with that plot a lot more than perhaps you or I would. But I didn't have a problem with that. I would probably agree with you though that the one plot probably supersedes the other in terms of like importance, in terms of what message we're trying to get here. But what I find really, really fascinating in the story is actually for the time period, and we're talking about, we're over probably using the word progressive here, but at the beginning of the story, I just really like how it moves the chess pieces really well in terms of the nuance in racism, even when, say, the character Lana Turner plays, Laura Meredith, who's a single mother, and she, as you mentioned, she brings the two into the family. And you're right, it's not like initially like, right, you're going to be my maid. It's like, it's kind of like, oh, right, yeah, you're in a tough spot. We're very friendly, we get on. Why don't you stay with us for a while? And then it transitions without sort of like any sort of formal agreement that she would end up being the maid of the house. And it's almost like forming those traditional sort of non-progressive roles, going back into the racist territory, even though it's disguised as a friendship between the two. She's always on the back burner. She's always going to be lesser than Laura is. She's always going to be the subservient, even if it seems mutual. It's just like an expected thing, and it's really, really nuanced and never really hammers it home, but it's always going on, and it always sort of bubbles in the background,
which works in kind of the, Sarah Jane's feelings and stuff like that. She's literally living in a household where you have two white women and two black women, and how that kind of they're on equal footing, practically at the start, but how one supersedes the other. But obviously, Lana's getting into Lana. She plays Laura. Lana. Laura's making her way into Broadway and going up there. There's a very interesting scene with an agent, which basically just says to her, if you want to get up in Hollywood, you got to sleep with everyone. And she's just like, yeah, disgusting pig. Which I thought, again, I was like,
yeah, she has a lot of agency. Yeah,
this film is dealing with some interesting things, which I can imagine were quite like in the 50s.
Yeah,
I did want to touch on Lana Turner. Have some trivia. First of all, I think she is brilliant in the film. I think she's really, really good. But did you know that just before this film started shooting, her teenage daughter killed her partner, who was a mobster called Johnny Stampanato, stabbed him to death.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so basically, I think in a pretty much abusive relationship, Johnny was not a nice guy. And when they were having an argument, her teenage daughter essentially feared for her mother's life and came out and stabbed him, which turned Lana Turner into a bit of a media sensation. And she was initially hesitant to shoot this film because of the kind of parallels to her life, especially with this idea of her daughter falling in love with with her boyfriend was kind of a bit of a
Parallel.
theory about what had happened really in this relationship. Like she'd killed Johnny Stampanato out of love and stuff like that. But yeah, so that was really interesting. It definitely wasn't that, and they were kind of acquitted, I think, of any kind of wrongdoing. It was all justified, etc. Yeah, it just thought it was really interesting. But yeah, it meant that like she wanted to still do this film because obviously there was a bit of a negative image associated with her at the time. But it was very difficult, and she ended up having a panic attack on the first day of filming, and yeah, I just thought it was a really interesting kind of look into this film.
That's crazy because I could be part of the potency of why that performance works really, really well too.
Exactly.
Well, that's really fascinating.
There is a 1964 film called Where Love Has Gone, which is actually based on that kind of whole story of Lana Turner and her daughter. And Johnny Stampanato.
I mean, like when you're getting into bed with a guy who's called Johnny Stampanato, it's not going to end well.
So yeah, no, I just thought that was really interesting.
That's cool,
and maybe informs that kind of performance, which performances across the board are absolutely brilliant, I thought.
I what also really struck me on a technical level is this movie must have cost an absolute fortune for the time. I was blown away. I can't remember a movie from this sort of period that uses so many locations. I mean, scene to scene. I mean, throwaway 1 minute scenes that are like use these giant gorgeous lots or these beautifully ornate rooms, and I was like I was just struck by the amount that was on display on here. It wasn't like just for it served the purpose of the story, and it felt epic and it felt novelistic in a way, but I was just really struck by it. I mean, I think the movie is stunning to boot anyway. I think it's a gorgeous looking film, and
yes,
yeah, that married with everything going on the screen, the story, Sirk's direction, and all the performances in this movie, it really is a must see, and a pretty justified spot on the list, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan. Actually, they spent £1 million, I believe, or $1 million on the jewelry that's kind of on display in this film. Wow. And Lana Turner's wardrobe for the whole film cost more than the salary that Juanita Moore got. So just another thing to put it into perspective.
Perhaps not progressive then. Yeah.
But, they were trying. They're trying. It's good for the 50s.
Oh, goodness.
They were trying. Do you want to watch the 30s film? Do you want to, is it made you, want to see the differences and stuff?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously the novel came out in 33 as well, so, it's pretty much a direct answer to the novel and obviously the initial success of that. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see, even though that it cast the character of Sarah Jane as a black actor, it'll be fascinating to see though if it does everything else right, or if it dips into the realm of stereotype that a lot of movies from that period did. So yeah, I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, no, so am I actually. I will get around to catching that one day. And one of the films that I always recommended to you, Chris, when we first met at Toys R Us was Far From Heaven. You did get around to watching it, right?
After a lot of, it wasn't persuasion. I wanted to see it, but I was slow. I was slow at getting around to it. I know the reputation. That movie has such a great cult reputation to it, and it should be a household name of a movie. Because when I eventually caught up with it, I was like, "Damn, Alex, you're right. I can't believe I've wasted so much time sitting on this thing because it blew me away." Actually, before you even mentioned it, I was thinking of that film while talking about Imitation of Life. They are kind of parallels in a way in terms of the melodrama of the 50s and dealing with racial tensions and having a central female white character who sort of is in the middle of all this. So
yeah. Well, I was going to say that was Todd Haynes wanted to make a Douglas Sirk movie, so this is heavily inspired by this film.
Yeah, he definitely did that. Yeah, I want to watch Far From Heaven. Also, Dennis Quaid is amazing in that too. I love him in that movie.
Oh man, everybody in that film is great. Julianne Moore.
Oh, they've got a reunion, haven't they, this year?
What, Far From Heaven?
No, like a Todd Haynes, Julianne Moore reunion.
Oh, have they? Ooh, I didn't know that. What's that?
Yeah, it's a new movie. Yeah, I have to look it up.
I'll have a look. I'll have a look.
I'm sure you will. You're straight on it. Yeah, so Imitation of Light, definitely worth recommending on there. Worth saying as well, if you can get your hands on it, there are some stunning copies of it that you can stream and watch online. So yeah, I was blown away. I mean, this thing looked like it was shot yesterday. And definitely memorable.
Including YouTube, right? I'm pretty sure YouTube has a copy of it.
YouTube? You mean to rent?
Like a free stream, I think. I mean, I
Okay.
don't know. Sometimes I don't know how legal those things are on YouTube, but it's there. So if you want to
back in the
experience
day
some film history,
back in the day when like you wanted to watch like Disney's Aladdin and you didn't have like a copy of it as a kid, you had to watch it in like 15 parts on YouTube. Remember all that? Like you used to watch like 10-minute segments at a time. Yeah, gone are those days now.
or like Simpsons episodes, and I remember doing that a lot.
Yeah, streaming South Park.
December is the new Todd Haynes film coming out, or at least I think having a December festival release.
Yeah, his movies usually like sort of come around that time.
Yeah, unless
Carol was like a Christmassy release, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's got Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman.
Ooh, I'm there.
Ooh. Yeah, I'll buy tickets. Might not be allowed to promote it, depending on how long the strike goes.
True. Keep it quiet.
Brilliant. Well, shall we move on to the next Sight and Sound blind spot? This one is a blind spot for both of us, and is the part one of a kind of Italian double bill, I think. Because after this one we have Journey to Italy, but this one is La Ventura by Michelangelo Antonioni. Antonioni.
Oh, that's a name.
I'm so sorry. I absolutely butchered that. Michelangelo Antonioni.
What was the gangster you referenced a minute ago?
Johnny Stampanato.
Johnny Stampanato and Michelangelo Antonioni.
This isn't actually my first Antonioni film. I have seen Blow Up. Have you seen Blow Up, the 66 film? It's like
again, to be
honest,
floats around all my streaming services, but I've yet to delve into it.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I mean, I remember watching that one in university, but I didn't really kind of put the name to it until I saw it on Letterboxd. I'd seen one of his other films, and I was like, oh, he directed Blow Up. And after watching this, I'm just like, Blow Up was so English. Like, it's a very, very English film.
Yeah. And this is so Italian.
This is so Italian. So La Ventura is a 1960 film that follows basically a gaggle of kind of rich Italians as they detour to a little island to explore. And whilst they're there, what's her name? Anna, played by Leah Massari.
Yeah.
She disappears, leaving her husband and her best friend and the rest of the group trying to search for her. But it doesn't take long before her husband Sandro, played by Gabriele Fazzetti, makes a move on Anna's best friend Claudia, played by Monica Vitti.
Yes. Yeah. This is like if you want a resolution in a movie, this isn't the movie for you. I thought this was really, really interesting. I think when you go into the movie, you kind of, I think I can't speak for Antonioni's other films because I haven't seen them. I don't know if you can sort of delve in and sort of mention your experience of his other film, but he definitely has more of a pondering sort of pace, unconventional for the time, like other sort of new wave films that we've talked about previously on the podcast. But there really is this sort of sense of people being in limbo. This movie is like about purgatory in a way. And I really thought that about the island that we spend the first sort of third of the movie on, whenever Anna goes missing, and everybody initially, Sandro seems quite concerned. I mean, I think nobody's more concerned than her best friend Claudia at the time, who seems to be the only sort of genuine sort of human being. Everybody else seems to be so complacent, and and just sort of bored by the whole event. I think they kind of, well, Anna had it coming anyway. She's everybody just wants to go back to their bourgeoisie lifestyle,
Yes.
at whatever cost.
And it might be worth saying that, like, I believe there's a line where they talk about Claudia. Claudia hasn't come from wealth. Like, she's made her way up to this lifestyle.
Yeah, sure.
So, like, maybe there's an element of, like, you know, she still has a brain in her. She's not like these dumb rich people. She actually experiences human emotion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's like it almost sort of plays that first third of the film when they're on that island, and the island's so memorable because it almost feels like it's just made of jagged. It feels like you're on the back of some sort of Godzilla-esque monster. It's like it's just scales and sharp tactile rocks and everything, and it's punctured by everybody's sort of ambivalence to the event, and Claudia is just like the only one. It's like almost like watching a horror film where our main character is the only person that's sane, and she's in some sort of nightmarish dream where nobody else can be. I mean, I think Sandro pretends or tries to posture himself as being interested. I don't know if he ever really was. I think his relationship with Anna up until that point was really just performative.
It was on the rocks, wasn't it?
It was on the rocks, literally.
It was literally on the rocks.
What I really appreciated what Antonioni does in this film that kind of pitch it off kilter as well from the very beginning is, I think I went into this pretty blindly and I was like, okay, Anna's our protagonist and Claudia's the best friend. And I actually I didn't really read the synopsis going in. And the movie kind of, as soon as Anna disappears, it unwillingly just punctures the narrative and shifts it over to Claudia. And she almost becomes the surrogate protagonist of the film, which I didn't really expect coming. And I think he's really good at playing with those, subverting those like sort of expectations there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It almost does like a little bit of a psycho move on you, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that Monica Vitti is the big kind of star of the show, and like you do any kind of research into this film before watching it, and it's all like Monica Vitti, amazing! Oh my god! You're like, okay, clearly she's more than just the best friend here. But yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because it like you said, it presents itself as this mystery film. But then almost abandons that as quickly as kind of Sandro abandons his feelings for Anna. And I mean, like if if it was made today, it would probably become some kind of satirical black comedy about the Italian elite. And I know,
Eat the rich.
a TV show that not so much about the Italian elite, but looked at that kind of difference between the elite and the working class, was The White Lotus, which filmed in actually a lot of the locations that La Ventura did, and is heavily inspired by it. In fact, there's a scene in the show where Aubrey Plaza's walking down the streets of Italy, and loads of men are just kind of like watching her and following her, very similar to the scene which happens to Monica Vitti. Are they in Rome? I can't remember. They're in like a small village, aren't they? Looking for clues for Anna.
Yeah,
because a pharmacist might have seen her and stuff like that. Anyway, yeah. So it almost turns into this kind of this film about the kind of fleeting emotions of either the elite or just humans in general. Like Sandro, very quickly moves on to Claudia. Claudia doesn't know what to make of this. Mm-hmm. I think initially she's a bit disgusted by it, but then like soon kind of falls into that relationship as well. And then by the end of the film, as things are heating up and Sandro decides to go to a party and she doesn't, like, the next morning she finds him with another woman. Like if he's not looking at the person he likes, then he's forgotten about them. Sandro is he's
not the best, is he?
He's a bit of a dickhead, isn't he?
Yeah. Not my favorite.
But so kind of it just becomes about this kind of, like you said, the complacent elite not really kind of feeling anything and just being there. And yeah, I did actually quite like it. Cinematography wise, incredible. I mean, shot on location. It almost feels like an Antonioni. 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 It almost feels like he, controls the weather. There are
Sure.
scenes early on in that film where it's like either it was a stroke of luck that the waves are crashing so dramatically that feels so in tune to the
Hmm.
emotion of the actors, or
And the location itself is so remote. It feels like it's on
yeah.
the edge of the world in a way.
Yeah, no, yeah, I kind of enjoyed it, and like it kind of it doesn't lead to much, and it is a film that's more about feeling than narrative, and it's not exactly a
Mm.
super strong narrative or anything like that. So
Yeah,
like I left it going like, oh yeah, it was all right, and then like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I quite enjoyed that.
I'm
Maybe
in a similar spot. Yeah.
more than I think. But do you want to know some trivia?
Oh, well, it could be the same trivia I had because you go ahead. You go ahead. I'll tell you.
Well, the island sequence in the film
Oh,
was
it's not.
it was supposed to take 3 weeks, but it ended up lasting 4 months.
Wow.
Um, yeah, the boats that couldn't take them there, the cast and crew got stranded on the island.
Like
Um,
actually in the film. Yeah.
yeah, they spent 3 days without food or blankets on the island as they just couldn't get back. They were creating rafts
Miserable.
to move equipment across from mainland to the island, and it was just terrible. I think they went on strike at one point because it was so bad. They went over budget. The people who were giving them their budget went bankrupt, and somebody else had to come on board because there's a lot. Like it's an expensive looking film. Like there's a lot of
Mm.
money in this film. There's
Yeah.
helicopters and big yachts and all kinds of stuff coming at one point. And then
Sharks. Well, we don't see the sharks.
yeah, well, no, it was a lie, Chris. It was a
Yeah, I know,
lie.
and that's
It was
just
a
trying to get people. Yeah.
lie. I did watch the film. The actress who played Anna, Leah Masari, she actually um, went into cardiac arrest when she was in the water because it was so cold, and she spent several days swimming in it, and just I guess her body just gave in. She then spent several days in a coma and had to be rushed to Rome for medical treatment.
Oh, great. Welfare was just brilliant back in those days.
So
Oh, it's all about the
pretty,
art.
a pretty disastrous production,
I
but I
mean,
mean,
one could say it was worth it. I mean, the legacy that it left behind. I mean, it made Martin Scorsese's like top list of best foreign films of all time. So yeah.
well, it was part of that kind of like knocking my bloody microphone off the table. It was part of that kind of new wave of films, like this similar time around like Godard and stuff like that, which kind of were kind of breaking the tradition of cinema and
Made general
break
audiences angry.
yeah, breaking the idea of like what a film should be, or this idea that the narrative. What about it? It's just about the feelings, man. It's about the feelings.
Yeah, that leans into like my piece of trivia where when this movie was screened at the 1960 Cannes Film Festival, it seemed like it was a full bring your pitchforks event.
Yes.
It's got it had a legendary like sort of harsh reception at that film festival where apparently where Vidi was crying, kind of was inconsolable, as everybody was sort of laughing at the screen during the whole duration of the film, like it was this ridiculous joke that was on there, and after that set a precedent, everybody sort of panicked and thought, where is this going to go? And then pretty soon after it was punctured by it was lauded by critics and became a sort of darling pretty quickly and did amazing in the box office. So yeah, it's had a famous sort of like sort of crazy little history going on there.
Yeah. It was
But
like one of the most notorious kind of like Cannes screenings, wasn't
yeah,
it?
you would have liked to be a fly on the wall, but I bet it was probably a really, really unpleasant event anyway. But
It is
yeah,
interesting that it was so like critically acclaimed despite that screening. Like that seems to be the only kind of bad press it got, was that initial first screening of it, and then
mm,
but then critics loved it. Interesting. Usually, and a lot of the films on the kind of Sight and Sound list were ones that were kind of critically panned at the time, and then their kind of legacies have been kind of
because
reaffirmed
they're
later on.
challenging. Yeah,
yeah. But this
it
one
is
was.
It is a challenging. I would say it is still with the legacy behind it and kind of getting to the back of Antonioni's intent. I would still say that this is a challenging film. I think
Oh yeah.
the first 50 or minutes to an hour are really, really captivating, and it's really, really interesting to see where it goes. And that's probably because it's led by the shift in plot and just sort of the thriller-esque mystery story behind here. And whenever that starts to sort of go to the side, and we are sort of just spending time with these two characters, it is harder because there isn't traditionally anything really sort of propelling the plot forward. We are just kind of hanging out with these people, and although there are interesting things going on in his mind with masculinity and in terms that women, the roles that women play in an Italian sort of society at this time period, it is not classically entertaining. Perhaps that's a little bit of a fault of mine, but I did feel that there was always intent behind Antonioni and what he was doing. I didn't feel like anything was thrown away, and I think it is somebody who's very meditative and deep in thought about what he is trying to represent on screen, whether it's in the foreground or the background. And the moment where it really kind of hit home for me, and I kind of got what he was trying to say, was actually thankfully in the very, very last shot of the movie, which I think is an absolute looker of a final shot.
In the final shot, not just the final shot, though, that is maybe the shot of the film. Mm-hmm. There are so many shots which are just so incredible, and that are like, I didn't mind so much that it was slow in places, just because it was just nice.
Everybody on the screen looks nice stunning at, as well.
Yeah. And I think Monica Vitti has been kind of, many people adore her for her beauty, essentially. That's not saying she's not a good actress. She's obviously an amazing actress. Mm-hmm. But I do think that her kind of beauty lends to the film and kind of makes you care for Claudia in a way that maybe, in that kind of similar way that Sandra is just like, I just like you because you're pretty kind of thing. You almost kind of fall into that kind of same place. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, and there's also
it's just nice to look at.
No, this is a very nice movie to look at, and I also kind of thought there was a lot of parallels to the sort of Hitchcockian sort of films of that era too. I really thought that Gabriel Frizzetti as Sandro, that he kind of reminded me as like an Italian counterpart to a Humphrey Bogart in a way. Not as relatable, not as likable, and and I think that's purely intentional. But there's this sort of, rough sort of man. He's done a lot of bad things paired up with a beautiful woman, and there was a lot of parallels I could see with American cinema at the same time. So that was interesting too. But this is its own thing completely. I will. There's so much imagery in this film that I will never sort of forget, and it will stay in my head. Particularly that first portion in the island, I think, is pretty iconic.
Yeah, the guy who plays Sandro plays Morton in Once Upon a Time in the West.
That's true. That is true. I actually didn't think about that. Yeah, of course. He looks so different in that.
Yeah, he does. Older, I guess.
Yeah.
When was Once Upon a Time in the West made again? Oh, 68.
60,
only 8 years.
Yeah, but everybody looks different. Everybody's tanned up to their eyeballs in that movie.
It's L'Avventura. I think I recommend it to cinephiles, maybe. Mm-hmm. Maybe not a film like Chuck On for the Parents.
No. Like it more than Celine and Julie Go Boating, Alex?
Oh,
I know that's still your low bar.
I like it quite a lot more than Celine and Julie Go Boating.
Still the low bar. Okay.
I'm sorry, Celine and Julie. I really am. But yeah.
Not for Alex.
Yeah, that one was not for me. And you know what? The more I think about it, and the more I discuss it with you, I think I like it quite a bit.
What's Celine and Julie Go Boating?
No, that one. I haven't changed my mind. Some films just do that, they just,
L'Avventura.
L'Avventura. I like it. So yeah, next is Journey to Italy, and then I think the next blind spot is
Is
a
that an
short
Italian? Is
film.
it Italian language film though? Is it?
It
I thought.
is. So it's an English language film,
Yes,
but it is
Ingrid
an
Bergman.
Italian film. It was then kind of redubbed for Italians, from what I can tell.
Right.
There are multiple cuts of it around. I guess is it on the BFI player? Yes. So I guess I will just watch whatever cuts on the BFI player. Worth mentioning, the BFI player cut version of L'Avventura is not very good. It is pretty bad quality. I'd recommend trying to seek out the Criterion for
Yes,
L'Avventura.
I did to seek out the Criterion version, and I was really thankful for it because I think it's probably the most gorgeous looking Criterion. I've pretty much watched most of the Criterion copies for most of the films that we've covered on this sort of show, and I do think it's probably the most gorgeous looking film. It's definitely up there of anything that we've seen on here so far. So yeah, if you're going to watch this, definitely go seek it that way.
Yeah. Nice. Later on in our list, we have La Dolce Vita, which apparently is kind of tackling similar things to L'Avventura, similar themes, and they were released in the same year. So
yeah, looking forward to catching up on that one because that's like forever been on my watch list. So it'll be great to finally tick that one off.
I swear I saw like 30 minutes of it once.
It's because it's 3 hour. It's a 3 hour movie, so it's always a hard sell to tell yourself on a Friday night or a Saturday night that I'm going to stick on a 3 hour Italian film. So yeah, so this will be a great excuse to finally like force yourself to stick it on and devote some time to this.
Absolutely. Are you going to be watching it ready for next episode?
What?
Oh, sorry, not La Dolce Vita. Journey to Italy.
We'd be skipping about 7 movies.
That's true. I was getting my films mixed up. Sorry. Are you going to be watching Journey to Italy ready for the next episode?
I will indeed.
Cool. Well, I'll make sure I find some time for it this weekend then.
We're going to be doing what we always do and pair 2 movies that will never ever be paired again together. We're going to be pairing Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 with Journey to Italy. I can guarantee you that no other podcast will be doing that next week.
Exactly. Do they go to Italy in Mission Impossible 7?
They do. There's an extended sequence in Rome.
Well, there you go. There's the connection. Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. Brilliant. So yeah, the most obvious double bill ever next week. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
I mean, maybe we could do the next BFI film too, because the next one, I can see Alex, La Jetée, is 28 minutes long. So that we might be able to squeeze that in too. Can't guarantee it yet though.
Yes, we've gone, we've had our longest film so far on the list with Satan Tango, and now we come to the shortest so far. I think there's another short film in there. But this one, La Jetée. Must be good.
Happy days.
Must be good. Anyway, make sure. Well, we're closing it off. Yeah, we're closing off.
Yeah. I'm done. I'm done with you tonight.
Yeah, I'm done with you tonight as well. This has been the Film Angle. Make sure to kind of rate us on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. So if you're on Spotify, give us the 5 stars. Same again on Apple, and you can write a review on Apple. So let us know what you feel. It really will help kind of spread the word and kind of boost the podcast to new and different audiences. We are on TikTok. We are on Instagram. And I've recently created a Threads account, the kind of new, hopefully less problematic Twitter. We'll see how it goes. So follow us on the Film Angle Threads account, and we'll see what we're going to do on there.
Be there on the grind zero.
Yeah, exactly. Day 1, baby. And where else are we? I think that's it, isn't it? Follow us on Letterboxd, I guess. Not the Film Angle, just.
Yeah, we log other movies as well that we don't cover on the podcast. So it's, if you're interested to see what we're watching in general, anyway, I always stalk Alex's like nearly on a daily basis. I'm like, oh, he hasn't watched one today. Okay, I'll check again tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm very much a weekend watcher, but Chris, you update yours a lot more often because you you get to watch them in the weeks.
I try to. Sometimes tiredness gets in the way, and you're just like, if I do this, I'm just not going to be good for the rest of the week. So I do. Whenever I feel the mood strikes me, I try to sneak one in, and I usually an older movie.
Exactly. So follow us at all of those places, and if you are listening on Spotify as well, we always do a little poll and a little question. So
last week we did Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny, and we had some mixed feedback on that. It's quite interesting to see the different ratings that people put on there. So we always have a little poll question like that, something super easy, and get involved.
Yeah, and there's always a question, and if you do write for the question, you never know, maybe we'll read it out one day. So yeah,
we'll definitely read it out.
Yeah, that might not be an incentive. I don't want anybody to know I'm listening to the film angle.
Alex just reads out. So my grandma says,
yeah.
Why are you doing this stupid podcast?
Yeah. What is a podcast? And why have you made me listen to this?
What podcast?
What is podcast? Anyway, let's wrap it up there. This has been the Film Angle for this week. I'm Alex.
And I'm Kris.
Ciao.
Arrivederci.